Hey guys, welcome back to the preview show. As always, I'm your host, Nico Sorrell, and I'm joined today by the Bogey Bros, Hunter and Trevor. Before we get started today, I wanted to give a huge shout out to you guys, Foundation Nation, for 100,000 subs. Hunter, you got any words you would like to say to the people?
I can't believe we actually got here. It's pretty crazy. We're actually getting close to a milestone on the podcast channel you're watching this on at 30,000. We also just hit 60K on Instagram. It's a milestone week.
It is milestone.
It's also a major week. So all around good vibes, but 100,000 subscribers is very surreal. It hasn't really hit yet. Once that plaque shows up, I think I might lose my mind. I might cry.
Have you gotten the button yet to claim it? That's tough.
Apparently that's what takes the longest to show up, according to Silas.
Gotcha.
That's tough.
According to Silas's research through other YouTube channels. Could take a few weeks, and then it's a few weeks after that.
Channels with 100,000, so.
Yeah.
So going into this week, we have the European Open. We're back in Nokia, Finland at the Beast.
The real beast.
The real beast, yes.
The real Beast, not... Was it Park Brazos?
The Brazos.
Park Bezos, Jeffrey Bezos.
I mean, I would even give them a slight pass because it's a really cool play on words, but like I feel like there's like 100,000.
Well, when New London first went in, we were thinking about calling it the Beast, and then we were like, what are we doing?
Yeah, you can't do it.
You just can't call it the Beast.
At least like
we were going to call it New London the Beast, as it was the most European style course, kind of like.
Well, and here's the thing: like I'm just call a course like the Monster or something. And
there's a monster at Fighting Creeks in Richmond.
Well, I'm just saying, like there are other words we can use to get across. Come on now,
Grim Reaper,
King Cobra. Like imagine stepping up to that. It's not that difficult. What's the one in North Carolina? It sounds really intimidating. It's the top rated one that we played.
It's not.
Oh,
Diavolo. See what I'm saying? There's other ways.
That
to
one's
do
pretty
this.
intimidating.
Come on now,
Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Rockiness Monster.
Yeah, those ones are a little silly.
So this course typically offers a variety of tee shots to get to the fairway. Pretty guarded by trees and pretty guarded by OB. We see last year the stroke difference between first and second, and then the rest of the field, it was like, what, 15?
It was enough.
15 strokes.
It was a lot.
It was very ridiculous.
Now I have to make me rethink my picks.
We also know that this course, it's important to be mindful of the ground play, especially since there's a chance of scattered rainstorm this weekend.
Raincoat Rick.
Yeah. Ooh, could get wild. We should be sitting in the high 60s. But some of the course changes for this year, the MPO layout looks like it's going to be about 100 feet longer than it was last year. I believe some of the changes are on hole 7, 11, 13, just adding a bit of distance on the tee shots to make it a little tighter, a little harder to get into the initial gap to get to the basket. And then in the FPO, they actually shortened it by 200 feet, most notably on hole 17, which was shortened from 459 feet to 361 feet. And then it also added 2 strokes, so it's now a par 65 for the entire layout. Hole 15 moving to a par 4 from a 3, and then hole 18 moving to a par 5, from a par 4 to a par 5. How do you guys expect these changes to play this weekend?
I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. I think it's like a stroke here or there. Some of the holes, like 11, for example, that hole just was already kind of difficult, and now they're taking away even more so the big hyzer. As we saw in the President's Cup this morning, some players like Eagle can still kind of do that. But I think most of the theme with this course, the OB provides a ton of separation, the ground play, and also don't forget about that bunker hole. That is always going to be daunting.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can pile it up there. I think ground play is always interesting. You do have a decent amount of undulations, but it's like the grass has really good coverage on this course, so you don't get a ton of crazy skips. And the other thing is the tree coverage at this course is a lot of big, tall, like pine or fir trees. I don't know what exactly they are, but they catch discs. If you get into them, you can have a lot of difficulty scrambling out of them. We saw that today in the President's Cup as well. Chris Dickerson on that last hole. And they're just a big thing to get around. It's not like you're just dodging tree trunks. So there is plenty of difficulty with the obstacles. They pinch the fairways at really strategic points on this course to make your landing areas uncomfortable. And the biggest factor is the wind is up right now. Apparently it's somewhat forecasted. They said that, Brian Earhart said that Paul was telling him it was the most wind he's ever felt at that course. And from what I heard, because the course is so much in a bowl in that park, it really swirls a lot. So I think one of the big factors to look at is going to be that wind and how players attack it, because the difference on some of those shots, especially some of those big placement shots on the par fours, between getting your disc to flip up just right and flipping it over and not letting it come back to out of bounds, because you're going to see a lot of drives where people are trying to get their disc to flip out over OB a little bit and come back. You're not going to get skips back in bounds a ton because of the grass, and it is decently thick. So that is difficult. It's not a course like LVC where you can play for ground play to get yourself back in bounds if you make a little bit of a mistake. You need to drop the disc where it needs to land and have it sit. It's kind of how it plays.
Yeah, I think most of the MPO changes, like Trevor said, they're going to almost be inconsequential from my standpoint when it's all said and done. I think it definitely makes it play a little harder, but I don't think fans at home are going to notice anything drastic. FPO, though, I like that they're not playing the exact same layout, which is what we saw last year. Even the par was the same, I believe. They didn't make it where this is going to be a really scoreable course for FPO with these changes, but it's more scoreable than it was last year.
Like 15, for example, that was that much different.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's definitely more scoreable. It's not like we're all of a sudden going to see FPO and MPO scores looking the same. But the course plays so well. I think it's one of the best designed courses on tour all year. Mm-hmm. And I love, like, it has that history of walking up to the beast. So many of the holes, if you've watched this tournament over and over, the iconic holes are still there. They're still pretty much exactly intact, or at least enough that you're going to recognize it all. And it just kind of feels nostalgic. So I'm very excited to be back out here. And I think the course changes that they made, we won't really notice them too much, but they're all for the better.
Yeah. Speaking of last year, Paul McBeth was in the Mick duel with Eagle McMahon. And it was pretty electric to watch down the stretch. Everyone knew, even the commentators were talking about it before the round even started, that these two were so far ahead of the field that they could probably stop before that day and they would have sat first and second. It was just ridiculous. Paul is currently sitting one major victory back of Ken Climo's 18 all-time major record. And I know the narrative for Paul has been that he is a majors player now more than ever. We used to see him dominate more year round, and now it's like the majors. He's showing up here, showing up there. Last time we saw him at a major, it was Champions Cup, and he placed 20th. What do you all see about Paul now, especially since he just won the PCS Open? What are you liking about his game now compared to then?
Well, I think the major thing, it just comes down to his focus level for starters. It's always easier to dial that up, but I think majors, when you get to that height of pressure in sports, your skill obviously is very important, but just being a good competitor and a competitor that can stay calm under pressure and who has been there before makes a huge difference. And no matter what you say about Paul as a player and his throwing ability and putting, he is the best competitor in the sport. I believe that. Because I think that, this year, for example, he struggled a ton with certain things on this golf course, but we saw in PCS, he is still capable of going out and winning. And I think when it comes to majors, when that pressure is at its highest, when you have somebody who has done it, like you just mentioned, 17 times already, it's a lot easier to do that than somebody who hasn't before. And a lot of his big competition, a lot of them are just trying to get either the first major in a long time or just get their first major, period. So there's a huge mental edge there. And I think that's what it comes down to, is when people just like to think that Paul is going to compete. And we have yet to see that not be the case at the European Open ever. So
I think what it is for Paul, this is just a theory, but I think sometimes pressure is almost a great equalizer, where it forces you to almost go into a muscle memory, shut out all the externals type of a sphere. And I think when you put a bunch of players into the bubble, Paul's one of the ones that benefits the most from that. Because I think that there's a lot of players that right now, not that Paul doesn't care about Elite Series, but he doesn't care about them as much as majors. No player really does when the rubber meets the road. And once you get on that, he's going to be on a feature card. He has the backing. He's always had the backing of the European fans. He's been their favorite player. He has probably even more backing of European fans this year after having just spent 6 weeks over there. He has all this external pressure, and that can make or break players. We've seen players like Gannon Burr, sometimes that makes them. But Gannon Burr has to get himself into a situation with pressure walking into this week. Paul, every time he walks into a major, he already has pressure on him. I think that pressure pushes Paul and helps him kind of focus to a different level, but more so block out bad swing thoughts, block out, putting, different putting woes and stuff, because it just I don't know. I think the pressure kind of helps silence things and you get alone with your own thoughts. And I think that's an advantage to Paul, whereas it's a disadvantage to some other players like Rick, who when he gets alone with his own thoughts, he's not thinking back to what he did here last year. He's got to think back to 2017 if he wants to think back to his last major, whereas Paul can go back, last year Worlds, last year European Open. He can go back very recently. Also, the Champions Cup, it was obviously a major, but he didn't perform very well at it last year either. Remember, he shot that 16 under, but it was 16 under with no pressure, just to kind of like get himself back to where his finish looked a little better than his play actually was. And he didn't seem to affect him when he came into European Open last year and ended up losing to Eagle, but he won in a lot of aspects.
He would have won on just about any other weekend.
Any other weekend he would have won. So like it didn't affect his performance out. He played near perfect. It's just two people played near perfect last year. So what are you supposed to do about that? And I think that is kind of where that comes from. And I'm expecting him to have a really good weekend out there. And I think everyone is, including himself.
Who are some of the other MPO players that you would akin to Paul having that muscle memory type pressure success rate?
Like straight to Paul, like same level?
No, not same level.
Okay.
But who would you associate with that kind of mentality?
I think Gannon Burr. He shows it. I think that's kind of where the clutch gene comes from. Is you're able to, in the time of pressure, step up to the plate and do what you just always do. And I think that is true of players like a Gannon Burr, like a Paul. It's streaky with a player like Eagle. It's streaky with a player like Rick. We've seen it a lot from Calvin. We haven't seen it from Calvin on this stage. But I mean, no one does it at the level Paul does it. Yeah, when it's all said and done.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Okay. So last year, like I said, we saw the McDougal, Eagle McMahon. Actually, this year, he's not doing terribly bad. Last year, he was out with that's when he first injured himself.
Yeah.
And this year, he was at PCS. He was at, what was the one before that? The Preserve. He was at the Preserve and finished fourth back-to-back at both of those. What are your thoughts on him repeating his performance, like his great performance that he had last year, but also winning it?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, since Paul won PCS, are very quickly to cement him as the favorite. And I think there's reason for that. There's precedent for that, especially now that he has momentum. But I think there's a lot of people are forgetting what Eagle McMahon did there last year. That he is a proven winner at this event who had no warm-up, essentially. He came straight out of injury, popped in for an event, and had one of the most ridiculous disc golf performances I've ever seen in my life. His arm talent affords him certain things on this course that other people just don't have, and that's Paul included. Paul does not lack in a lot of things in disc golf, but Eagle McMahon is he's a different animal out there. Like, there's just certain things he can do on that course. I saw it even this morning in the President's Cup. There are lines on that course that he can hit that Paul cannot hit, for example. So like just the way that like hole 11, how high and wide he can take some of his hyzers. Those are kind of shots that he has. I also think if the wind kicks up and he has more of a spinny putt, that could play to his advantage. Heck, even if the wind just picks up to the point where it takes putting a little bit out of the game a little bit, that would probably help him. He's so arm talented. He has dealt with injury this year as well, but I can't see him being in a worse position than he was last year. I mean, he was throwing left-handed shots last year. This year he has some amount of a forehand, no matter what that looks like. So yeah, I think that a lot of eyeballs are turned to Paul right now, but I will not be surprised to see Eagle shred this course once again. I don't know if the numbers of last year can be achieved. I don't know if that's even reasonable, but I do know if he gets going again, you can expect some fireworks.
We talked about earlier, when you're talking about ground play at this course, you expect to hit the ground and you're going to stick or move maybe a couple inches.
Yeah.
And when you first said it, I didn't have anyone that I was thinking about in particular, but now that we've talked about Eagle, he is the first person and the only person I think I can think of when I'm thinking about those type of shots.
He can throw discs very far and very high, and it allows him to land shots in a more vertical fashion than anybody else on tour. We see him do it with grenades half the time. And there are just a lot of shots. The island, the bunker hole, for example, being able to take that shot in on a spike angle is so beneficial, because not only is that going to stick you from going back out of the green backwards, but it also sometimes will allow you to jump over those hay bales if you get a hop off of the first one. So there is just when you watch him play, you see him throw a lot of shots where you're like, well, no kidding, that he could, like, it just feels like a huge advantage for him on certain holes. Now there's plenty of flaws that can pop up in his game as well, but I think this course just suits him well, and I expect him to do pretty well.
Especially if he re-injures himself. That would suck.
Yeah, most certainly.
This isn't the place to do it. Hunter, what are you thinking?
Well, so first off, if Eagle or Paul has the type of performance they had last year, they will win. Either of them, because they're not both going to do it again, in my opinion. But I think the Eagles at a disadvantage this year over last year, mainly due to the fact that last year, like we said, he was coming in off an injury. There was zero expectation on him at all. He was able to come into the event with no eyeball. If Eagle came out there and finished 15th, we probably would have been like, that was a very solid performance out of Eagle.
Very true.
So he was able to come in and get the ball rolling and surprise people. And by the time there were eyeballs on him and pressure on him, he already had momentum.
Yeah.
Paul wasn't granted that. Paul came in with all the pressure, all the eyeballs on him, just like this year. And Paul was able to put up basically the same performance as Eagle. Now, in the clutch time, Eagle obviously clutched up, one is what it is. But Eagle's coming into this tournament with a lot more eyeballs on him than he was last year, a lot more pressure on him than it was last year. Advantage Paul there, in my opinion. So I don't think Eagle is going to go back to back. And I think that if Eagle's not on lead card after the first round, I think he loses by 10 strokes or more. If he doesn't come out hot, I think he will mentally defeat himself and it's over. I think he has one round to prove it to himself, and if he doesn't do it, I think he takes himself out of it completely. Because as much as Eagle has proven himself as a winner, as much as Eagle has proven himself as a clutch player,
and he fights. I would say that he's a player that fights.
I would disagree. I think there's a lot of times where Eagle McMahon still has that mental weakness to him at moments, and if the right situation, like an expectation of repeating, like an expectation of everyone knows this course suits his game very well. If he comes out and blows a tire for one round, he's not out of it technically, but I think he'll be mentally out of it completely. That's what I personally think. And so, but again, if him or Paul has a performance like last year, the other I don't think is going to be able to keep that pace, and no one else on the field is going to keep that pace. So if one of them is able to put together a few rounds, like 2 or 3 rounds like last year, it's over. They won. I don't expect two people to do what they did last year. But personally, I don't expect Eagle McMahon in the top 5 this week.
Okay. That is very bold.
It's not my bold prediction, but that is prediction.
It could have been. That is very...
my prediction's bolder.
Okay. I can't wait to hear it then. That's
going to be great. Someone else who has a lot of pressure going into this weekend, I would say, Calvin Heimberg.
I agree.
He's looking for his first major ever, and he watched Champions Cup slip away from him, and Isaac Robinson came out of nowhere and just snagged it. He played better, and he took it. We've seen in the last couple tournaments at the Preserve, at PCS, that Calvin's constantly putting himself in a position to do well in order to win. But the problem is, I feel like in his final rounds, his putting gets so shaky that, like, I see him hit cage, band, and it's, what is he going to have to change about his putting? Is he going to have to put more height on it? What percentage do you think he's going to have to shoot in order to be in contention and win this event?
Yeah, I think it's just a confidence issue. I'm definitely starting to see, and I even saw it this morning when I was watching him play. I'm seeing a lack of confidence on the putting green. I am not, like, I don't think he's throwing very great putts. He seems very frustrated with almost every putt that he throws right now, and it's very uncharacteristic of him, so uncharacteristic that it's like really messing with my perception of Calvin. I hope that he can straighten things out. I think if the wind is up high enough, that actually may help him. Just not in the sense that he's a great wind putter. I mean, he's fine, but
his shots are phenomenal.
Yeah, but in the sense that if the wind gets up enough that putting becomes less of a factor in the event, I think that could help him a little bit. But yeah, I think it's just a confidence thing, and I don't think it's tough to say that a major is going to be the time to find your confidence when it's, as somebody who is, as held in such high regard as Calvin, but has yet to win a major, that is like the first big hump to get over in your career. We saw it with Eagle when he was first bursting onto the scene. You can be a superstar, but getting that first major is a tough thing to do to get things going. So I don't know if this is going to be a great time for him to find that confidence, but I hope he does soon.
And every major that he that slips out of his fingers. I feel like that looms more and more over his head, and he's putting more pressure, I would say, on himself. Like, obviously he's getting environmental pressure from everyone, but that's a block that's building up.
Yeah, the majors are tough. It is tough. And once you get that first one, I think it becomes infinitely easier, at least for a few year period of time where you're not expected to just like, oh, there's not, that looming over you, but it is not easy to win that first major. I can tell you.
Yeah, I think this and USDGC are his two best shots at majors, because I think they both favor the thrower over the putter. Because I think these are both courses where if you're throwing hot enough, then you can mess up on the putting green and still gain strokes on people, because if you're keeping the disc in bounds and you're giving yourself birdie putts and you're missing those and taking par, you might still be taking strokes on the field. So I think this course and USDGC both set up where one of those two could very easily be his first major, and it could be this weekend. I mean, in recency, we've seen him, even when he struggles on the putting green, still put himself in a decent position to where it's like literally at the preserve, if he makes like 2 15-footers or something like that, he wins. I don't know if it's actually 2, but if he makes a few very easy Calvin-like putts that we expect Calvin to always make, he wins, or is at least tying. And so I'm not too concerned with it going into this week, because again, I think a course like this plays a lot better to throwers than it does to putters. And there's almost less pressure when this putt is to take 2 strokes on the field versus 1 stroke on the field. And so when you're giving yourself birdie looks on really hard holes, it's almost less pressure, because you're like, well, even a par is a good score here. That's not how Calvin's actually thinking, but it's like a subliminal message to yourself of like, when a course has this much teeth, if you're keeping the disc in bounds, what you lose on the putting green, you can make up by not taking OB strokes. So I think this is one of his better shots at winning a major. If he goes this entire year, he loses here, he loses Worlds, he loses USDGC. Next year, that's the storyline, is Calvin is majorless, because he's having a fantastic season. This is the season he needs to win a major in my opinion.
Yeah.
And this is probably the major to do it. Also, sideline, Ricky's going to be under a ton of pressure here, because the storyline has picked up steam. We're thousands and thousands of days since his last major win. And at this point in his career, he needs a few more majors to cement himself as one of the all-time greats. He is a Hall of Famer. Right now, he's not an all-time great yet. You can win as many Elite Series as you want. If you end your career with 6 major titles, like he's one behind Dave Feldberg right now. And I'm sure there's new players watching this that are saying, who's Dave Feldberg? That is the line where Ricky's one behind right now. If he gets himself 3 or 4 more majors, like, no offense to Dave Feldberg, he has 7 major titles. He's one of the all-time greats of our sport. He's probably more known in the current disc golf atmosphere for running the amateur disc golf tour than as a major champion. That's where Ricky Wysocki's one shy of right now.
That doesn't seem like a Rick position.
Let's not get very hyped up because we're in the Rick era.
I think that's because most disc golf fans started watching disc golf after his career.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that has a lot more to do with it.
Most current basketball fans started watching after MJ's career. You got to break through a threshold. There's a lot of great players in MJ's era that aren't heard of, because if you're an MJ, a Ken Climo caliber player, it breaks through. People still talk about your name.
Fair enough.
If you end your career at 6 majors, and we're in Ricky's prime, I don't care what Dustin says on debate night. This is Ricky's prime. We're in Ricky's prime, and if he goes majorless through this stretch,
you actually think this is Ricky's prime?
This is his athletic prime. There's no way around that. His age.
Yeah, I don't know. Regardless of if it's the best disc golf he's playing in his life, this
is when he has the most peak performance potential.
Like he's here. He's in his late 20s,
and you got like 5 or 6 more years. He better pick up 3, 4, 5 majors if he wants to be cemented, and if he wants his name to be able to be said in the same breath as Paul McBeth 20 years from now. If not, it's going to be Ken and Paul, and then people are going to have to go research and find Feldberg Ricky. I don't think that's where Ricky deserves to be. I don't think that's where Ricky wants to be. But if he doesn't start,
2-time world champ.
Sure. Feldberg won a world champion.
Right. Just one?
I think 1, maybe 2. I can't even tell you. That's what I'm talking about.
Right? Well, it is. I understand. A lot of people will probably hear that take and be like, "What the heck?" But the best way to think about it is like during Ricky's era, like right now, it is very easy to rate him correctly. We know how good he is. But 20 years from now, when all people are really looking at is the stats, because that's how people argue for sports, there will be something to said if he doesn't have a lot of world titles. I mean, you'll look at a guy like, I think that Ricky Wysocki, when it's all said and done, is a better disc golfer than Will Schusterk. I said will have a better career. But Will Schusterk has 3 U.S. titles. Yeah. like they stack up in the majors, you know. So like that's the thing is like, it's one thing to be known really well in your era, but accolades, they do something for your longevity. Now I will say this: if Ricky doesn't win majors, but he wins like a billion player of the years, and like
it'll definitely help.
Then that definitely helps. So that is the other way you can kind of recoup is to just win a bunch of player of the years.
At the end of the day, it's easier just to win a few majors than win player.
I feel for the kid on the playground that would try to argue for a player like Rick if he only had like 7 or whatever majors, and then like they throw that one out. Like these are how these things are won and lost.
Yeah. So without spoiling it, is he sitting currently in either of y'all's? Are you thinking he's a top 5 player for this tournament?
For this tournament?
Yeah,
he definitely could be, but I didn't pick him in my top 3.
Yeah. And your Twitter post. So
I think you had him at 7th, but that was after I watched everyone tee off at President's Cup this morning, and then I literally said, after watching the President's Cup, here's what's about to happen.
Yeah, he didn't play well at the President's Cup.
Which historically, that has been a pretty good tell. Like last year, Paul and Eagle looked untouchable at President's
Cup. They're on the course. So, like, you know.
And they play the hardest holes of that course. Well, maybe not technically. Yeah, the hardest holes of that course. 1 through 3, the opening stretch. They play 9 through 11. It's a decent stretch, and then they finish on 16, 17, 18.
Yeah.
People who play well in the President's Cup tend to have some good momentum going.
The last thing I'll say about Rick too, I guess, just to like get the point across, is like if you were to ask me right now who are the best disc golfers of all time, I would say Paul, and then I would say Rick, very second one. But like I said, years from now, it'll be harder for people won't have watched Ricky's entire career.
That's what, yeah.
Right. That's what it comes down to.
And Ricky Wysocki is on my Mount Rushmore of disc golfers right now. He will always be because I'm witnessing it. But my son, Luca, he's not going to witness the career. So I'm going to just be the old guy telling him, well, you didn't see Ricky back in the day.
He's going to be trash talking Ricky. Like, this guy's son.
If you don't see the greatness, then you can only look at the paper. And you better fill that stat sheet up.
Till we just need like AI to get us, VR AI to get us like to go to the events. And
just like the people arguing for Climo as the GOAT. If Paul wins this weekend, they're tied on all-time major records. No one's going to touch Climo's world records. But our generation will always be like, well, look who he's playing against. He wasn't playing against nobody. We're foolish to think that the next generation isn't going to say the same about our generation right now.
Absolutely.
And so people will be like, well, Ricky had this, that, and the other. And they're like, well, look at his generation. Like, who do you have to beat? The first several years of his career was just beat Paul, and you did it. And like, that's what are we supposed to say to that?
Yeah, that'll be how
you got to win majors if you want to have your name remembered forever and ever.
Yep. Before we stop talking about Calvin, I wanted to ask both of y'all, do you see it more likely to have an Eagle Paul battle once again this year, or do you think it's going to be a Calvin Paul?
Which one's more likely?
Yeah, which one do you think is going to happen?
I think it's more likely to be Calvin Paul this year.
I would say Eagle Paul. I have no reason to believe it. I mean, Eagle, you said, back-to-back 4th places, defending champion, and he played really well this morning. That's what I've got to go off of right now.
I already explained my Eagle.
But it's a coin toss. Like
I think Eagles coming.
It could also be Eagle Calvin. Like I think those are 3 of the best players in the world.
I think Eagles coming into this tournament with a lot more external pressure.
Paul's sitting in 5th,
and I think it could break.
Thank you, U-Disc.
No, on U-Disc, he's not sitting in 5th. He's in 3.
Like one off the top of being number 1.
Did that change after PCS?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's almost number 1.
He's almost number 1 in the world.
Yeah.
If he wins this weekend, according to U-Disc, he'll be number 1 in the world. Notice I said according to
he just has to beat two the other two.
He beats Calvin and Ricky, he's number 1 in the world, according to U-Disc.
According to U-Disc.
That's the important caveat.
So someone who could be really sneaky now that we're talking about shot landing zones, placement, and he already has his major out of the way, Isaac Robinson. What are your expectations for him going into this weekend?
Very high.
I love him.
You will see in my predictions, very high. I think he's going to do extremely well at this course.
This course, if you watch
another guy who played really well this morning.
It paints very well to Chris Dickerson, Isaac Robertson, Nate Sexton.
I love
style.
Robertson.
Did I say Robertson? Robinson.
You kind of did.
Style golf. And we've seen Nate Sexton do well here before, which helps paint this picture even more. But Isaac Robinson, what we know about him, he keeps the disc in play. He doesn't really seem to mess up his angle of release, which is a very much touch angle control course. And his putt is good in the wind too, which Well, the wind affects a lot of people's putts. So if the wind is up, like we were saying, yeah, that helps Calvin. Yeah, that helps. It doesn't help them if someone's banging every putt anyways. And I think that's something that Isaac Robinson could do. So my jaw is not going to be on the floor if Isaac Robinson wins this thing. I think Isaac Robinson is one of the players that should be in the talk of, is it going to be Paul Calvin? Is it going to be Paul Eagle? I think it's just as likely to be Isaac Robinson, Paul, Isaac Robinson, Calvin, or Isaac Robinson running away with this thing and everyone going, who the frick is this kid?
Completely agree. Yeah.
And I feel like part to play in that is that Isaac doesn't have a lot of pressure going into it. I don't think he does.
He still slips under the radar. He really does.
I don't. Right. Yeah. Well,
I don't know why. I mean, he doesn't to me anymore. Like I look at him and I think, yeah, he is a guy to beat. But
it's similar to Calvin of a few years ago, where his game doesn't impress you.
It's unassuming.
His game, he goes out. He knows what he's going to do. He's not throwing farther than everyone on his card. He's just not messing up. Yeah. It's the same way Chris Dickerson won USDGC. He just doesn't mess up, and it's like. It doesn't matter how far someone's throwing or not. If Eagle's throwing 500 feet farther down the fairway and is messing up, the guy who's not messing up is going to win. So he just does it like he just chips away. And like if Isaac Robinson wins, he'll be in contention after day one. Maybe a stroke or two back. He won't be talked about. He'll be in contention after day two. People be like, wow, Isaac Robinson's really hanging in there. Surprising to see him on the lead card. He'll be in the lead after round 3. And people are like, okay, well, can Isaac Robinson actually hold on? He's going to be the underdog even if he's in the lead until I'll know where he wins his second major this year. That could be the storyline of how Isaac Robinson wins. Now, I didn't predict him to win. I'll spoil that.
He's a baller.
But he's also the type player where I think it's important is a lot of the top dogs, Calvin's not one of these players, but when I think of Eagle, I think of Paul, I think of Gannon. They're either winning this or it's a performance like last year where they're in it until the very end. But I think the second that they are truly, they feel out of it. So maybe that's 5-6 strokes back after round 1 and they start counting themselves out.
Hands off.
Then I think they get hands off. Isaac Robinson's not that player because Isaac Robinson, I think, underestimates himself. I don't think Isaac Robinson's coming into this week thinking, I'm going to win. I think he's like, top 5 would be incredible.
I think Paul's type of player, if he's out of it after round 2, he's not hands off. He's like, I'll probably shoot the course record.
Yes. That's Paul's mentality is win or nothing. And so what that happens is like, he could be like we've seen in the past 6 strokes back of Rick and chase him down, or he goes balls to the wall, tries to throw everything in and ends up slipping to like 25th. That's why Paul kind of seems hands off. And I think that's true of a lot of players. Gannon has admitted that like if he's not actually in it, he loses focus.
Yeah.
That's not Paul. Paul, as soon as he feels out of it, he's like, I have to eagle every hole if I want to win this thing. So I'm gonna go try to eagle every hole, and it leads to a lot of bogeys. Which I respect that because like
was he looking good?
At least trying to win.
Was he looking good this morning?
It depends on which hole you watched.
Paul. Yeah.
Or Isaac.
Oh, Isaac.
Isaac looks fantastic. Isaac looked better than everyone else.
When they first announced the roster, I was like,
won his matchup.
It didn't make sense. It didn't.
But what Isaac shot more under.
Isaac was 2-1, and Eagle was 4-3 for his match.
Well, it just depends on who they're playing, though. Who shot better?
I don't know. I
stroke play, Isaac Robinson played better.
UDisc was showing it as like who won the hole and who didn't.
Of course.
Well, they did, but I'm just saying, like, I wasn't.
I know this morning's stroke play, Isaac Robinson shot like 6 or 7 under through their 9, and Eagle and Paul struggled. Okay. Stroke play. Match plays, obviously.
This morning, Eagle shot 1 under in. Oh, you're talking about in the first match? Yeah. Isaac shot 6 in that.
Yeah.
It was the match play.
Isaac already has Eagle by 5 going to the tournament.
Okay. Well, there was a second part of that tournament, is all I'm saying.
Didn't Isaac win his match?
Yeah, but in less convincing fashion. That's what I'm saying.
Who was he playing?
Antelope.
That dude's a killer.
He was playing a better player than Eagle too. So hey, listen, I think he's gonna.
I love Isaac Robinson in this.
I think,
and it's not that I hate Eagle in this. I just like Isaac Robinson more than I like Eagle.
Confirmed Eagle hater.
Back when they announced the rosters for President's Cup, I honestly didn't think that much of him. But then I like re-saw the list this morning before everything kicked off, and when I saw his name, I was like, wait, why is he? And then I was like, oh. Yeah, he's good. He's a good player. So I'm excited to see what he does this weekend. All right. So now going into FPO, unfortunately, we're not going to see Paige Pierce defend her title or attempt to. I'm going to make no indication that I think that she would have defended it with Kristen now in the field, back from injury from last year. Yeah, it's not looking good if you're in the FPO and your name's not Kristen Tatar.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. She won her PCS Open. She bagged her another major this year, Champions Cup. And then she's this is the last one the last major that she needs to complete every major, to get every major
slam. Yeah.
Career slam.
Like that's just ridiculous.
This is about as like almost obvious. I mean, every Kristen pick each week is like pretty obvious. I mean, she's won 8 out of 13 starts this year. So even if you were betting, you would be up. But this is about as obvious as it gets. Paige isn't in the field as a defending champion. The field is weaker just in general. There are other players such as Haley King, who I believe is not there.
Nope.
Kat Merch is also not there. So like there are players who are proven to have success on the tour, even in spite of Kristen, and they're not even there. So it's basically who's gonna step up and have the weekend of their life and try to challenge. But of the players there,
I think there's only 2. Yeah. There's only 2 that may have a chance.
I would.
I make the list 4.
4? Okay.
Trina Allen, Missy Gannon, Evelina Solon, and Henna Blomberg.
Okay, you hit both of mine. Missy,
there is absolutely no way that Evelina or Henna can win a tournament with their putting. Well, there's no way.
If their putting doesn't miss.
I saw a couple 3 putts this morning. Yeah, like
Kristen putt. I'll say I fully agree. Kristen Tatar is probably 90% chance of winning. That might even be low. Yeah, she's gonna win.
I'd love to know what is going in.
It's disrespectful to the rest of the field what she's doing to them. But she didn't look super sharp this morning. I don't think she needs
won her card and won her match.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
So
I was looking at just her game. I wasn't looking at anyone else's game.
Yeah,
maybe she's so lax she doesn't think it's a challenge.
Well, that's the thing. She doesn't think she's at a point right now, like Paul was in 2015, where she doesn't have to look super sharp to win by any means. She can look bad and win at times.
And my big thing too is this is a 4-round event. You give her 4 rounds,
she'll be done within 3. Yeah, she doesn't need that.
That's where it's like there's just no way.
I do think this course plays very well to her strengths. I think this course, we saw Evelina Solon have the round of her life last year. So there are hopes for other players, but it is going to take, again, I think the only other 4 that have a chance is Evelina, Henna, Missy, Kat. But it is going to take the 4 rounds of their life to beat Kristen, in my opinion, unless Kristen just beats herself. I don't see it happening. This is a course that people are going to make mistakes. And so I think like, even if Kristen goes OB a few times, sometimes that can really cost her. That's not going to really cost you at this course. And she's too consistent overall.
I don't think it would be weird to see Kristen have like, let's say she comes out round 1, is up by 2 strokes, and then round 2 has an awful round and goes down 5 strokes. I don't think that's a crazy thing to happen. But then the next 2 rounds, there's so much time you give when you have a player like this, and this is how it used to be for Paul at Worlds. You have a player who is so clearly the best player, and you give them enough rounds. Like Worlds used to have like 6 or 7 rounds. This is a 4-round event. They are going to win.
They're just going to win.
They're just going to win.
How many strokes back does Kristen need to be for you to say she doesn't have a chance going to the final day?
Doesn't have a chance? 9.
I was thinking 10. I think if she's 10 strokes back, I'm like, let's see the first 6 holes and see what happens.
Right.
That's where my mind's at.
It's just
because this course has some serious teeth.
It's gotten to that point,
and it is scoreable, but it's just only scoreable for like 1% of the field.
And the last couple really like
in the last few holes, like if Kristen gets to hole 16 and she's 4 strokes back, she might have already won it.
Bold predictions presented by Third Wave. Hunter, what you got?
Yeah, so Third Wave Coffee is actually my brother's coffee shop. Right up the road if you're ever in town, like maybe for a major next year, World Championship, check them out. But Third Wave Coffee is a local roaster and coffee shop, and they're committed to ethical and sustainable sourcing for all their coffee and have 20 single origin coffees from all over the world in stock right now. Plus, they just released a little bit ago the Bogey Bros blend that was tasted and approved by myself, Trevor, and Connor. It's perfect for all of you looking to dip your toes in the specialty coffee scene, or if you're already in the specialty coffee scene and looking for a good blend, pick it up. So for all of our listeners, they're offering 20% off your order with code DISCGOLF, one word, DISCGOLF. So head over to third-wave.coffee. Pick something up today.
What you got? What you got for your bold prediction?
So my bold prediction.
Your heinous prediction.
I don't think it's heinous. I think it's one of my bolder predictions.
Oh, great.
In my opinion. I think this is borderline. People are going to... I'm just going to say it.
Okay.
I think if Paul Macbeth wins here, he ends up being player of the year.
I don't know why you think that's that bold.
I think it's very bold.
You don't think that's bold?
Well, not like I don't. Hunter's not saying based on just those 2 wins. He's saying like that will lead to him eventually becoming player.
Well, because I think that if he wins PCS and then he wins European Open, we now go to D-Glow, Idlewild, Ledgestone, MVP, USDGC, World Championship in Vermont. Paul could tear all of those up.
So, I mean, I will say, like, the resume that looked like it was going to be a world beater at the beginning of the year, which was Calvin's, has not really improved itself in quite a few weeks now. It's been since Jonesboro.
But he's been like consistently top 3,
Right,
top 4.
But
Like,
that doesn't matter.
Wins tackle.
Yeah, wins.
One majors, at least 2 or 3 Elite Series wins.
I think it's like 2.5. Yeah.
So
I think
that erases half the season.
I think if Paul wins here, he'll have a major and Elite Series. I think is every reason to believe he gets one of USDGC or Worlds, and then one more Elite Series. I don't think that's crazy, but I mean, certainly it would still take quite a finish to his season. My bold prediction is I think we're going to see another battle, but I don't think it's going to be Eagle and Paul this year. I think it's going to be Paul and Isaac, and I think that both of them will be separated by at least 4 strokes at the end of the tournament by the rest of the field. I think this is a course that just had especially over 4 rounds, has such potential.
I can't wait for Isaac Robinson to come in 30th.
He better not. He better not. I'm all in on Isaac Robinson.
All cards point to Isaac Robinson having a good weekend, I think.
Yeah. I'm just mad that we're not going to be able to see Nico Castro versus the disc golf time ref.
That's
man.
right. That was last
European Open.
Man,
good time.
That was crazy.
Trevor, what do you got for FPO, man?
For FPO, this is a pretty simple conclusion. Kristen Tatar winning.
No.
Yeah, and I have Katrina Allen in second.
No.
Now I didn't go with Missy for third. I decided to go with Evelina just because I do think that Evelina will throw really well on this course. And I think that Missy's putting is also in shambles right now. Mm-hmm. So while she will probably keep the disc in play more, I like either Evelina or Henna sneaking into third. I don't think they're going to be close. I think Kristen's going to win this event by a lot. But yeah, that's
I think she's going to win by at least
5
10 strokes.
I wouldn't say 10.
I'm going to say 10.
I said 10 in my tweet.
Okay.
But that was after just one hole of the President's Cup where she was parked hole 1. I was like, Kristen won everything. That was what that tweet was based.
Well, when I see last year's scores, the winning score by Paige was 12 over. Which
they play the same layout as the men.
But I don't see.
I think the winning score this year, because I think the course will probably play 8 to 9 strokes easier. Weather might make it play 1 or 2 harder, and I think Kristen's going to play better than Paige played last year. I'll put the winning score this year for FPO at 2 over.
That's reasonable.
Okay.
That's what I think wins.
Very
and I think that winning score comes from Kristen Tatar.
Shocker.
I think Katrina Allen is in second.
Uh-oh.
And I have Missy Gannon in third.
Oh, wow. See, I feel like you and I usually flip-flop on that. I usually am like,
we did.
Missy Gannon.
That's what happened last week. I had Henna third. Henna broke my heart.
She did. She will continue to.
Yeah, so I'm not putting her in there. Sorry, Henna.
Okay. All right. What do you got for your MPO?
MPO, I have Isaac Robinson in third. I feel like I
thought you were about to say
him
first, and I was like,
top 3. No. I have Mr. Consistent Calvin Heinberg in second, and I have Paul Macbeth taking it down.
Yeah, I just couldn't get myself to pick Calvin. I don't like that because he's gone like second, third for the last few events here.
He's
but
good. Yeah.
At the last major he was at, he took 16th, I believe. So I do have that to go off of. I'm going to take Eagle in third. I think this is a scenario where Eagle is in contention, but just has a bad final round. I have Isaac in second, and I have Paul winning in first. I think if it comes down to Paul and Isaac, I think Paul will beat him down the stretch. But you know, if Isaac can pull away a little bit, he has shown that he is not easy to catch.
Only reason I didn't put Eagle in my top 3 is I don't think Eagle's going to win. And again, I don't expect a performance like last year where they're just both unconscious. And it's like, at that point, they both are winning, realistically. And so I don't think that scenario is going to happen. And I think Eagle self-destructs is what I think.
I think he might, but I think it happens in the final round.
Yeah, I think it's going to be so tight that that's enough to drop him out of the top, perhaps possibly out of the top 5.
I don't see this year has not really been a player that's imploding. Like I
agree. I just don't think he's been under the amount of pressure that he's going to be feeling himself, because this is also like the Discmania event. He is Discmania.
He also came out last year coming off an injury, and I felt like he might have put pressure on himself to perform well, and that's what led to him being absolutely insane.
I think he had no
if he puts pressure on himself, I would say so. It was all internal.
I think he was quoted like he was just happy to be out there. Like I think after the first round, he was shocked at himself that he was in contention. I'd have to go back and listen, but I'm pretty sure he blew himself away last year. He's not going to blow himself away this year. He literally told, I think Brody said that Eagle predicted his score. I think he won at 42 under last year. I think he predicted his score at 43 under. He's putting too much pressure on himself, I think.
Wow.
We'll see.
Dang, that's a hot disc golf right there. What do y'all got for Dark Horse, Hunter? We'll start with you.
I picked Isaac Robinson's father, Nate Sexton.
Let's go.
That's not a bad pick. Although I feel like Sexton, he's just not really working out anymore. Like, I don't know. At this course, he'll have a decent chance though.
He has a lot of course knowledge here.
He does. Yeah, it's true. And that helps. I've got Vino Makala. He's sitting right outside the top 30. Pretty easy pick. He will do well at this course.
Yeah, I think he'll probably come like a place or two behind Sexton.
Maybe.
All right, well, that's going to do it from us. Thank you so much again for tuning in to the preview show. Get out and watch the European Open this weekend, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.